Light and Magic was formed in 1975 to realize the complicated special effects challenges for a new film called Star Wars, a space adventure dreamed up by a young filmmaker, George Lucas. His vision was unlike anything Hollywood had heard before.
With Star Wars, I want to do an action picture. I want to do something where I can pan with the spaceships. I want to do it where they're really short cuts. There's a lot of rhythm, a lot of pace, a lot of movement on the screen. I want it to be very, very cinematic. And at that point in time, that was impossible. You just could not do that with special effects. So when the studio said, well, how are you going to do this? I said, oh, all right, we'll figure it out. I got to, but I had no idea what I was going to do.
Do not try and bend the spoon. That's impossible. Instead, only try to realize the truth.
What truth?
There is no spoon.
There is no spoon?
Then you'll see that it is not the spoon that bends. It is only yourself.
The Oracle will see you now.
There was a great study done recently of divergent thinking. Published a couple of years ago. Divergent thinking isn't the same thing as creativity. I define creativity as the process of having original ideas that have value. Divergent thinking isn't a synonym, but it's an essential capacity for creativity. It's the ability to see lots of possible answers to a question, lots of possible ways of interpreting a question, to think what Edward de Bono would probably call laterally, to think not just in linear or convergent ways, to see multiple answers, not one. So, there are tests for this. One kind of cod example would be people might be asked to say, how many uses can you think of for a paperclip? One of those routine questions. Most people might come up with 10 or 15. People who are good at this might come up with 200. And they do that by saying, well, could the paperclip be 200 foot tall and be made out of foam rubber? Does it have to be a paperclip as we know it, Jim? Now, there are tests for this, and they gave them to 1,500 people. This is in a book called Breakpoint and Beyond. And on the protocol of the test, if you scored above a certain level, you'd be considered to be a genius at divergent thinking. Okay? So my question to you is, what percentage of the people tested, of the 1,500, scored at genius level for divergent thinking? Now, you need to know one more thing about them. These were kindergarten children. So what do you think? What percentage at genius level? 80. 80, okay. 98%. Now, the thing about this was it was a longitudinal study. So they retested the same children 5 years later, age of 8 to 10. What do you think? 15? They retested them again 5 years later, ages 13 to 15. You can see a trend here, can't you? Now, this tells an interesting story, because you could have imagined it going the other way, couldn't you? You start off not being very good, but you get better as you get older.
Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules, and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them. About the only thing you can't do is ignore them, because they change things. They push the human race forward. While some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius. because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do.
The biggest difference when I got to Korea and living in Seoul and working for the CEO of LG Electronics was usually you're talking about contracts and acquisition process around contracts. I asked my team to give me a report on all the contracts that LG had in place, and they came back with 3. There were no contracts. Most of the $50 billion that LG was spending in Asia with Chinese and Japanese and Korean and Taiwanese companies had no contracts. They were all based on very strong collaborative historical relationships that was really very different than anything I exposed to before. And of course, the contracts were with U.S. companies, as you might imagine, because the U.S. companies just demanded that they have contracts for their services, even though they were probably less favorable than others than a non-formal or informal contract.
Openness. It's a word that denotes opportunity and possibilities, open-ended, open hearth, open source, open door policy, open bar. And everywhere, the world is opening up, and it's a good thing. Why is this happening? A technology revolution is opening the world. A new generation is opening up the world as well. I started studying kids about 15 years ago, so actually 20 years ago now, when I noticed how my own children were effortlessly able to use all this sophisticated technology. And at first I thought, my children are prodigies. But then I noticed all their friends were like them, so that was a bad theory. So I started working with a few hundred kids, and I came to the conclusion that this is the first generation to come of age in the digital age, to be bathed in bits. I call them the net generation. Social media is becoming social production. This is not about hooking up online. This is a new means of production in the making. And this idea agora that he created, an open market agora for uniquely qualified minds, was part of a change, a profound change in the deep structure and architecture of our organizations and how we sort of orchestrate capability to innovate, to create goods and services, to engage with the rest of the world. In terms of government, how we create public value. Openness is about collaboration. The printing press gave us access to the written word. The internet enables each of us to be a producer. The printing press gave us access to recorded knowledge. The internet gives us access not just to information and knowledge, but to the intelligence contained in the cranium of other people on a global basis. To me, this is not an information age. It's an age of networked intelligence.
Thank you.